Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Ruffin. I will be presenting the response to intervention, and I want to welcome you all to this presentation. So, we all want to know what is response to intervention. It is an early identification tool that helps struggling learners get the assistance that they need so they are successful. These services are provided by the general education teacher as well as other on-staff personnel. So now we want to know, how does RTI or response to intervention work? I will use those terms interchangeably. So when I say RTI, I do mean response to intervention. It is a research-based academic behavior intervention that ensures that every student is successful and that every student has to learn. And as we said, it's multi-tiered, and what we mean by that is that there's three tiers. In the first tier, all students will start here, and about 75% of the students will remain in this tier. And this is where all the beginning classroom instruction takes place. Tier 2 is where about 10 to 15% of students will remain, and this is supplemental instruction in a small group. And tier 3 is our most intense instruction. About 5% of the students stay here, and this is one-on-one. So as we said it before, tier 1 is where all students will begin. The general education teacher will administer a screening or an assessment, which will take no longer than about 10 or 15 minutes, and these assessments will tell us where the students were struggling. So as we evaluate where those students are struggling, we want to make sure that those difficulties are not in part to inadequate instruction or classroom management deficit. So if we find that those two things are a measure of why the student is not being successful, we will use scientific-based evidence and instructions and methods to ensure that those things are fixed so students are successful. So then we will see, once we evaluate that those two things are not an issue, the at-risk students will then move to. So tier 2 is where supplemental instruction will take place. So these students are not making progress after we have seen instruction and we have tried to change it. These students are not being successful. We will then break them up into a small group, which usually is facilitated by a special education teacher. So here is learning is differentiated, where we're able to kind of hone in on what the deficits are and able to help fix those. Group sizes are going to be about 4 to 5 students per group, and that each segment will last about 6 weeks. Before the 6 weeks is up, another progress will be in place so we can monitor how the student is doing in that assessment. And if the student is doing really well, they will then go back into tier 1. If they are struggling but showing a little bit of improvement, they will remain in tier 2 for another 6 weeks, where they will have their progress monitored and will adjust accordingly. If they are not showing any progress or very minimal progress, they will go ahead and go to tier 3. Now in tier 2, it is still a general education program. Because they are showing at risk on the assessments, this qualifies them to have that supplemental instruction, and if they do not respond, like we said, they will move on to so tier 3 is the most intense of the tiers. We want to continue to expand on what is not having success and progress. So here the students will stay for a longer period of time. We will target those deficit skills. They will be seen more frequently and also be given material that has been changed or adjusted. At this point, if a student is in tier 3, we will ask for an evaluation for special education. Now, the role of the teacher during this progress is to identify what students need help and with what. And we are going to start to change curriculum and modify curriculum and see where can we adjust for each student. As you know, in secondary education, things could change from each period. One period could respond to one thing while another does not. So that will give us that availability to change and monitor those things and be able to make the roles of the school staff. So we have the general education teacher, and the special education teacher will be co-teaching with the general education teacher. So the special education teacher will be able to facilitate those small groups, as well as in Tier 3 work one-on-one with those students, as well as speech pathologists, licensed school psychologists, and administration will be there to make sure that the teachers and all staff have all the resources that they need, and they're going to be able to help troubleshoot any issues that arise, especially with scheduling. Scheduling in secondary education is a major factor because there's so many moving parts, and so administration will help remedy that. The roles of the parents. We want to partner with the parents. We want to make this something that we're all doing together. We want to know, we want to keep you in the loop of how your student is progressing and what tier they're in and what interventions that they are in and what we're planning to do to help them be successful. So RTI can do many things. One of many things that RTI can do is that we can really see how students learn. We can see how they learn, and we can adjust accordingly, because at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that every student is successful. We also want to take into part cultural and diversity, because those things do matter. What is happening at home? What things are different at home? So when we look at the data, we're able to take those things into consideration, and we're able to act accordingly. So what RTI cannot do, RTI will not exclude students. So if your student is not struggling, we don't want you to think that they won't get help, because they will be with the general education teacher, and she'll be able to focus on the students that are in that group that are on the same path, and so she will be able to keep on with instruction with those students. The students who are struggling and will need help will be in a smaller group, and they will be able to get curriculum in a manner of which they need in a small group, so information can be broke down for them. Also in Tier 3, students will be able to work one-on-one. So in this model, every student wins and they're set up for success. What RTI will not do is create a disability. We will not find a disability either. What happens with RTI sometimes in secondary education is that a lot of times at this point, if a student has not been placed in special ed or has not been classified with a disability, if one is at this point realized, it's only because at this point the data has shown that. The data has shown the student has been successful, and because the student didn't fit into previous qualifications for things such as a learning disability, they may have fallen through the cracks. So it won't create or find a disability, but it will find those students who previously were overlooked for one reason or the other. So here I've given you some resources, and with these resources, I've also given you these in a handout as well. And so these are awesome resources that I will encourage each of you to educate yourself further on the matter and just see what RTI looks like at different levels and in different places. I want to thank you all for your time today and being a part of this presentation. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.